And I remember the guy that was in the tower with me, and I'm just like, I'm like, don't put your nods on. Look over there, man. It's gonna fucking freak you out. And of course, what's he do? He puts his fucking nods on. He's like, what the fuck? First of all, what the fuck is that? Holy shit. And he's starting to stress out. And I'm like, hey. Every square foot of dirt in that entire field has probably got 1,000 motherfuckers that died and ground up, and they're just fucking there. So what you're probably seeing is, somebody who hasn't got the memo that he kicked his air addiction and he's still walking around out there. Maybe he's planting his fields or doing whatever the fuck he does. All right, everybody. Terrence Popp here with another episode of Live from the Lair. And I'm going to try to do this in 2 episodes, but it might be 1. I don't know how it's going to pan out, but I was talking to some of my old soldiers, and they brought up a few other ghost stories that I completely forgot about. All right, so I'm just going to go down the list. They're not in any particular order, so you just got to bear with me. All right, so this next one, we did 2/3 of our tour in Iraq, in Abu Ghraib prison, and the last third of our tour, we were right across the street from Victory in a camp called Lair, which used to be a R&R site for Saddam Hussein's upper echelon officers in his army, because back in the day, actually it's still like this in the Middle East, soldiers hold a extremely low tier on the social ladder. The standard enlisted guys, the officers, the more professional corps were treated quite nicely in Saddam Hussein's army for the most part. I mean, of course there's crazy stories here and there of shit that went on, but for the most part, those guys were treated pretty good. So, we were assigned to Lair, and every now and again, we would have to man the towers around that particular outpost. Now, one of the towers was alongside a large farm field. I mean, I know there's a lot of farm fields, but this particular one was out to the front of the tower was on the wall, and as you looked out over the field, which was about, I'd say, 1/4 mile wide, and it went for like about 1.5 miles along the wall, and then there was a city on the other side. I don't remember what it was called, but it was pretty creepy because right around 10 o'clock at night, they would turn off all the fucking lights and, do their fucking deal. Technically they're not supposed to do that, but, I mean, insurgents were fucking going crazy by then, and it was, IED central out and around Victory, including car bombs. But on this particular night, I was up in the tower, and I don't remember who was with me. And, just like all the other times when you have soldiers, doing long, tedious tours of monotony, we fall back on the sport of bullshitting. And I remember I'm just sitting up there bullshitting, and, we have the ANPVS-7s, and we also had a little a handheld thermal device. Had, somewhat limited range, but it was still pretty cool. So I remember I'm looking out over this field, and I see this light. I mean, it kind of looked like a firefly, and even though they don't have fireflies over there, none that I saw, and it wasn't like a greenish yellow, it was blue. Okay, and it was fairly faint. And you would see it for a couple seconds here, and then it would be gone for a couple minutes. Then you'd see it again, and then you wouldn't see it for like an hour, and then to come on again. And I remember watching it, come and go for a while, and I decided to put on the PVS 7s. So for those of you who don't know what a PVS 7 is, it's a night vision device that's standard issue in the United States Army. And the way it works, it takes ambient light and magnifies it into a little screen that you can actually see what's going on. Of course, it's there's no color, and it's like shades of gray and yellows. So it's kind of like a black and white tube, but it's yellow and green, gray. And I remember, I saw the light, and I put the nods on, and I looked at it, and in the nods, this little faint light was about the size of a fucking basketball. And it wasn't that far away. It was maybe 100 meters, and it went between 80 and 100, 150 meters away. And there's no fucking way that this was an insect of any kind. Okay, there was nobody in that field that would have seen him in the night vision, and we would have seen him with the thermal. Now the weird thing is when we looked through the thermal, you could barely see the light at all. There was no heat signature whatsoever. But when you put on the 7s, you could see the blue ball just moving up and down. It would go for about 100 meters maybe, and then it would disappear, and it would reappear in another place and then move the other way. In a weird way, it looked like a soldier walking his post. And I remember the guy that was in the tower with me, and I'm just like, don't put your nods on. Look over there, man. It's gonna fucking freak you out. And of course, what's he do? He puts his fucking nods on. He's like, what the fuck? First of all, what the fuck is that? Holy shit. And he's starting to stress out. And I'm like, hey. Okay, let's just get something straight here. Every square foot of dirt in that entire field has probably got 1,000 motherfuckers that died and ground up, and they're just fucking there. So what you're probably seeing is somebody who hasn't got the memo that he kicked his air addiction and he's still walking around out there. Maybe he's planting his fields or doing whatever the fuck he does. So, that was pretty fucking creepy. And I remember I walked that post, and I stood in that tower. I think I did 4 or 5 shifts in that particular tower. And on that particular day, I saw it many more times than I saw it in the subsequent shifts I pulled. Because usually I would see it for maybe 25, 30 seconds, and then it was gone. But that one night, I saw it probably 4, 5, 6 times. I don't remember the exact count. But that was some pretty fucking crazy ass fucking shit right there.
Zuck the cuck drinks water like a duck, but he also drinks your data. So tell him and Google to shove your data up their schwing-schwangs by downloading the Brave browser. It's free, blocks online advertising, and protects your privacy and data from evil tech companies. You only see ads if you want to see them, and you get cryptocurrency for your attention. Don't let Zuck use you to make a buck. Download Brave by clicking on the link down below.
I talk about this in the book that I have coming out, the Jericho Files, in regards to what my theory is on a lot of these ghosts and so forth. Hopefully I'll have that out by Halloween, if not the first half of November. It's getting formatted for digital, and then I'll have it on print-on-demand paperbacks. All right, here's another weird one here. Okay, so we were living on Lair, and I recall the building I was living in, was around this one, artificial lake. And I used to run around the lake because it was paved, around the whole thing. And there was maybe a 4.5 foot fence that kept you from actually going in there. All right, now the word on the street was, throughout the years, there were a lot of women that were brought onto that post and raped and murdered by Saddam's fucking officer corps. Did I actually see anything? No. But, I could, that place was just fucking crazy, stupid, fucking haunted. All right, I've always been able to feel it. I know I sound like a Fruit Loop, but it's the truth. Now, we were living on one side of the lake, and then the other side, no one was living in any of those buildings. And then a little bit beyond those buildings was the far wall. And there was a couple towers along there. And they were reconditioning these buildings to get ready to hold troops. And you would see contractors in there every now and again. But they didn't work on Fridays or Saturdays because, apparently that's the equivalent of our weekend. Like they don't work on, I think Friday's a holy day to them. Not really, I'm trying to remember. Just like Sunday is a holy day to us Christians. So they never showed up. They didn't work on Fridays at all, period. And I remember I was doing laps. And I had run around the lake, I think I was like on my third lap, and I was like right around 1.5 miles. And there was nobody in these buildings. And I remember, oh man, it was fucking creepy as fuck. So I get done with my 2 miles, I'm stretching out, and I'm looking out over the lake. And in one of the windows that was facing me, it's like, on the other side. And, I could see through the building because there's a window, and then there's a window on the far end of the building, and then there's a hallway that runs down the length of that building. And it wasn't a very big one. And all of a sudden, I see this pitch black silhouette of an individual standing in the fucking window. And I sat there and watched it for a good 90 seconds. I did the rub my eyes, blink, the whole thing. And it was fucking blacker than fucking coal, And it fucking, I got that familiar shiver right up my spine. The hair on the back of my neck was standing up. I put on my uniform, put on my boots, grabbed my weapon, my LB, the whole fucking deal. And I walked down there with another soldier, and we inspected the building. And there wasn't anyone in there. Now, just for shits and giggles, the guy I was with, I stood him in the window where I saw the silhouette, and I walked back to, my barracks, my building, and I looked out, and it had been maybe 25 minutes, so there wasn't any great shift in the light, and it was about 11 o'clock in the morning. We're going to go to chow after this. And I'm looking across the lake at the soldier. I posted him in the window, and I can see all the details. I could recognize who it was. Okay, I mean, there was no shadow, shades. There was no reason for the silhouette to be pitch black. So, that one really creeped me out. And I chalked it off, I laughed it off, but it really fucked with me for a while. And I never saw it directly again in that particular area. I would see, silhouettes and windows out of the corner of your eye and shit. But, I mean, the way your mind works is you make excuses for stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, to make yourself feel better. It was just probably somebody in there just watching us, blah, blah, blah. No, I have no idea. And I even toyed with the idea that it was some enemy Haji who jumped the wall and was all doctored up in some kind of dark camo that was watching us. But those towers at that far wall were manned. So coming over that wall in broad daylight, and then covering the 120 meters between the wall and the first building without being seen. That's like some world-class ninja shit there, and I just couldn't see it happening. But to make myself feel better, that's the excuse I gave it. So, you know, who knows fucking what goes on out there in the universe, but that particular day, it was fucking creepy as fuck. Now, over there in the Middle East, they live with death on a very, very common basis. People were killing each other left and right. I was always sitting in on briefings, battalion briefings, intel dumps about individuals being kidnapped who are living in, you know, on the economy. It wasn't American soldiers or American citizens. They were, you know, other Iraqis. But, you know, they would get their door kicked down at like 2 a.m. They would come in and drag you out, and you would disappear for a day and a half. And then they'd find you with your ankles, knees, and hips drilled out, your shoulders, elbows, and wrists drilled out, and then they would, you know, basically slit your throat or cut your head off. That was actually fairly common. Not that, you know, that particularly didn't really bother me much because, you know, they're killing each other. They weren't really doing it to Americans. And in my philosophy on that particular, you know, subject was if somebody kicks your door down in the middle of the night and decides to do shit like that to you, you know, that just doesn't happen out of the blue. You know, it's just like an ass whipping doesn't fall out of the sky. Okay, you probably did something to somebody to wind up in that predicament. So it doesn't surprise me at all that that country is haunted, you know, 3 ways to fucking Sunday. Okay, let's see. Okay, now this one takes place on actual Abu Ghraib prison. Now, when we got there, we rolled into Abu Ghraib prison, I believe, in January of 2004. And the first wave guys who took all of Iraq were rotating out. Now, before the prison fell, a lot of the Iraqi guards executed an insane amount of fucking people. Tortured them to death, fucking chopped them up in wood chippers, hung them. I mean, you know, the stories, you know, I heard from some of the guys who were first on the ground explained to me, you know, showed me pictures of all the fucking just crazy fucking shit. And there's a couple rooms that fell under the 425 area of influence that were boarded up. They had been boarded up since we got there. And I remember we were told, you know, not to fucking move the boards, don't fuck with shit, because there was all kinds of just heinous, you know, gore and fucked up shit on the other side. You can catch anthrax, which is actually quite plausible when you're dealing with that kind of shit. And a couple of my soldiers, you know, approached me and explained to me that this particular room had been boarded up. They had never moved the boards. And every now and again, there would be a pounding on the wood from the far side, like somebody trying to get out. And it didn't last for very long. It didn't go on for hours or days or anything. It would go on for 5 to 10 seconds, and then it would stop, and they wouldn't hear it again for a few days, and then it would. And, you know, I just, yeah. Did I blow them off? No. Typically, if any of the soldiers brought anything to my attention, I took it very seriously. Because if they're going to go out of their way to tell me something, it's obviously important to them. And as a senior NCO, you know, it's your job to look into shit like that. No matter how crazy or far-fetched it fucking seemed. And I decided, I would swing by there every now and again and check it out. And I remember 1st Platoon had moved out for the Syrian border, so that their barracks was, their building was virtually empty. And the room in question was across the courtyard at ground level. So I would go down there and set up a chair and sit outside that door in the evenings for, a half hour, an hour at a time. Either I'd eat an MRE or I'd have coffee or cocoa and, listen to some music. And then one day I heard it. And it was fucking beyond creepy. I'm sitting there. I'm like 25 feet away from the opening. And I heard the pounding. It was 5. It did it 5 times. It was like boom, 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 boom. Like somebody punching the fucking door. I got up and I'm like, holy fuck. I walk up there and I'm listening on the other side. I'm not hearing anything. I'm not hearing anybody walking around. I walk around the building. 'Cause I think maybe somebody went in a window or something like that. No, all the windows were boarded up as well. There was no openings to that fucking room at all. And I heard that shit plain as fucking day. I wasn't tired. I wasn't drinking. I wasn't under the influence of anything. And that shit fucking, that freaked me the fuck out. That was pretty fucking creepy. And I got the vibe that whatever was doing it was trying to get the fuck out and was stuck in there for whatever reason. And I remember when 1st Platoon came back, we actually took down the wood and looked on the far side of the door. And that entire room was full of dried blood and brains, skull caps, bits of flesh, a couple of fingers. That was some fucked up shit in there, man. That's like Leatherface, torture, crazy stuff. So we sealed that room back up, and my guys just fucking went about their business and ignored the fuck out of it. But yeah, that's some creepy ass shit. All right, gentlemen, that's the first iteration of Ghost Stories. I hope you enjoy it. Enjoy your Halloween, and you take it easy.